The Chicago Bulls just look like they don't have very much rhythm in their loss against the Milwaukee Bucks. We're going to talk a little bit about that and the continued defensive mistakes that are starting to piss off Zach LaVine, and Billy Donovan is getting louder and louder about what the Bulls are failing at to do and grasp on their defensive concepts. We're going to talk about that. We're also talk about where a lot of Bulls fans are starting to point the blame solely at Josh Giddey, and while there is some definite shortcomings there, we're going to take a look at that and comments from Richard Jefferson on the state of the Bulls. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the content for today. And so, of course, this loss to the Milwaukee Bucks sucked, right? And really, when you look at it, the Bulls, I think, have only won like 3 out of the last 12 games, something like that. It's 3 games in double digits, as all I know. 3 out of 11, 3 out of 12. And overall, right now, the Bulls are hurting. And, I know there are some Bulls fans that look at this and say, well, we're off to a slow start. And I kind of agree and disagree with that, right? Yes, it's the start of the season. We're 15, 16 games into the season at this point. And so, yeah, it's easy to look at this and say, well, it's just a slow start. Maybe the Bulls can shake it off. But contrary to even last year, where a lot of people want to bring up what the team did last year and what the record was last year this time, last year was turmoil. Last year, we knew that Zach LaVine, he wasn't really healthy, right? There was some chemistry, like him, DeMar DeRozan, and Nikola Vucevic all started off the season very slow. When you look at the individual statistics, Vooch, Zach, and Kobe have all actually started off this season playing better than what they did last year. And so when your core 3 players are all playing really good, and yes, there are players that have gotten off the slow starts. Ayo, I believe, is off to a slow start right now. But then you look at Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips. These are 2 guys that are big parts of your rotation this year, right? Big parts off the bench. And, I mean, we really can't say if they're in rhythm or out of rhythm just because of, hey, this is the first year that they've really played this much of a role for the Chicago Bulls, and Dalen Terry and Julian are impacting the game in their own ways, right? I would say that you really can't say Dalen Terry's off to a slow start. Yeah, he's not an offensively gifted player, that's going to have big input, but, when you look at it, he's taking open shots confidently. He's hitting his wide open shots way better than what he ever has in his career. His defense, the rotations there are really good. So really, when you look at it, the only players that you can really point towards having a slow start are Josh Giddey, and Ayo Dosunmu. Even Patrick Williams is, I know people like to label it a slow start, but Patrick Williams has played basically up to what Patrick Williams usually does. Now, if he can take his game further when he comes back from injury, great. But I still don't look at this being a team that's off, that you can give the excuse of, oh, they're off to a slow start. Basically, just about everybody is giving right at what they've given before, more so in a few cases. And otherwise, yeah, you got some injuries to Lonzo and things like that. But we know that Lonzo is not playing back-to-back. So to me, the excuse that some Bulls fans are trying to give this of, oh, well, it's just a slow start, I don't know so much about that. Now, we've seen it. We're towards the end of November. I've said it before. This team really has to get it together in the month of December, because after December, it gets tough for this team. So they really want to use this December to really, and it gets easier kind of like around February as well. So they have some easy stretches, but we already knew that this stretch of schedule for the Bulls was going to be difficult. So maybe if you want to give it that caveat as well, you can point towards that. But like I said, just looking at what this team is given as far as in their individual performances, this much feels like the 2022-23 season, where Zach, DeMar, and Vooch all had individually really good seasons, but it was still a struggle for the Chicago Bulls. And overall, too, there's just a talent deficit here that they just aren't going to realistically be able to turn some things around, on top of the lack of size, those type of things. So when it comes down to that, I just don't know if the caveat of it's a slow start really applies to this team, in my opinion. That's just my personal opinion. Everybody can have their own opinion. When you look at the game yesterday against the Bucks, for example, Giannis had more points in the paint than the entire Chicago Bulls team. It came down to it. When you look at it, Billy Donovan also said that the discipline needs to improve on the defensive side of the ball. So there were defensive breakdowns that simply just came down to this team not following the game plan, right? And when you look at it as well, the Bucks had 31 free throws to the Bulls, only 7 on the game, 0 in the second half for the Chicago Bulls, where the Bucks got over 20. So when you look at that, these are things that have kind of plagued the Bulls team on and off already this season. The Bucks also closed out the game with an 18-4 run that solidified that while it was within 1 or 2 points at one point, but it never really felt like this Bulls team was really in this game. And Zach LaVine afterwards, when Zach LaVine starts calling out defense, that's how you know that you're in the sunken place defensively. Zach LaVine saying this after the game: experience is the best teacher. For us right now, it's defense by committee. It's not like we're trying to give up certain plays or mess up certain things. I think you've just got to go through it, then keep hammering away at film, teaching points. We all make mistakes out there. It's the ones that are costly. If you see Giannis in the post and we're supposed to be doubling, it's like, okay, that happened a couple of times. Then you get into this from Billy Donovan. He says there's a youthfulness to us in these situations. Things happen so fast, and it's like, I don't know what to do. We have to be better at awareness of personnel. You've got to randomly and very quickly make decisions. This is part of the learning and growing process for a lot of these young guys where they're now playing meaningful minutes. A lot of the younger guys have to understand the importance of the work that goes in away from the practice facility, in your hotel room, at your house at night, going through personnel, watching and studying, doing all those things. Now, is that quote outwardly Billy Donovan saying that these young players aren't doing enough outside of practice? No, not necessarily. He's not necessarily calling out and saying, hey, these guys aren't doing shit outside when we're not out our practice facility, but it is showing that there's a concern that maybe that they are not showing the work ethic and the attention to detail needed to not fall asleep on some of their assignments, right? And so that's what you got to look at for as well. And that's where the leadership part of this comes in at. The Bulls need that leader who's going to step in and say, hey, what the hell are y'all doing, right? And so I think that comes down to like hearing that, hey, what are you doing in your hotel room? What are you doing in your own house? Are you watching? Are you studying tape? Are you doing the things that really come down to what separates a talented NBA player from a good NBA player? And I think that's where the thing is right now. The Bulls have some talent on this roster, but everybody's talented in the NBA. Talent isn't just enough to get through. Now, we do have a deficit of skill set at certain positions and in certain players, make no mistake about it, but you got to be locked in and engaged. You got to take the work home for you when you're in the NBA, and especially if you want to excel and be better than expectations. And that's right now, at least where it's seemingly by Billy Donovan's words and comes from Zach LaVine, that the attention to detail just has not been there for this team. And as long as you miss out on that attention to detail, you're going to keep having situations like the Bulls are experiencing now where they just don't have it, right? And that was the game. They looked out of sync, out of rhythm. It was bad last night. The energy was bad. They felt like a team that was like on the second of a back-to-back, even though they weren't, right? They had a couple of days rest. This team is, I've said it before, and I do think that this thing could get worse before it gets better, and that may be by design. We'll get into that a little bit here in a second, but overall, the Bulls just got to execute better. Turnovers weren't as big of a thing last night, but they were still a thing. The fouls were a thing as well, and while some of those may have been ticky-tack fouls, it still comes down to it. You didn't have the discipline. And so when you do start getting to that, the refs also get in the rhythm. When you're hacking early or fouling early or even consistently, all right, then you're not getting the benefit of the doubt on the 50-50 calls anymore, because guess what? You've been fouling early in the game. And so the Bulls really need to look at those things. Somebody got to take a charge at some point as well. So overall, this has been a very interesting first 16 games of the season. But like I said, in my personal opinion, I don't necessarily look at it as a slow start. I look at it as a talent deficit. I look at it as an execution deficit. But when you look at some, like I said, those performances individually, a lot of them have been in line. Right now, again, that is some players that are off to a slow start, and those players are important. Iowa's important. Josh Giddey, as long as he's the starting point guard, is important. I don't care what nobody says in your own personal issues with Josh Giddey and the Alex Caruso trade. He's the starting point guard on this team. He's still drastically important, right? You need him to be in rhythm with his passing, with his rebounding, all those type of things. So they got to get those things together. Can they? Will they? That's what remains to be seen. We'll see what the ceiling is for this Bulls team, but we said it coming into the season. Nobody, like I said it when the schedule came out. We're going to know exactly who this team is by January, and that's just it. I don't care what anybody's saying as far as a slow start, what ATS is complaining about, trying to sound like the smartest person in the room. I don't care what nobody's saying. If you could not start showing some meaningful improvement between now and the end of December, another month, hey, that's it. That's your season at this point. That's who you're locked into. And at that point, like, you just got to deal with what it is. And injuries are always going to be a story for every team. Every team is going to deal with injuries at some point. So, yes, missing Lonzo for as long as what happened, missing Patrick Williams for a week, it's going to suck. But at the end of the day, like, you got to have the next man up mentality. And for that credit, Torrey Craig stepped up admirably in yesterday's game. So, we'll see what that's going to go and develop into. But next up, I want to get, and it's going to segue into a lot of other things. Richard Jefferson absolutely killed the Chicago Bulls yesterday. He also brought up the White Sox and the fact that Jerry Reinsdorf owns that. We're going to go ahead and play that clip now. We'll talk about it after this.
The Bulls are not going to return to relevance. They are not anytime soon. You can say go get Brandon Ingram. Ultimately, they've been trying to patch up what is just not working. You said it. Don't be in the middle. They've been in the middle for multiple years. So they need to strip it down. Like you said, they have a lot of attractive pieces. And they look like they were headed that direction when Alex Caruso and they bring in Giddey. Yeah. Let's go younger. Let's go younger and cheaper. And then ultimately they got into a space where it's just like, this is still not going to work. But I don't know if ownership, right? If ownership, mind you, they also own the Chicago White Sox, which had the worst baseball team in history. So they're not stressed about that. Only thing I'm going to say is that the Bulls, they do not look like they're going in the right direction for the last 10 years, and it doesn't look like it's changing.
The reason I feel like they're in
the Bulls are trying to patch something together that isn't working. That is the quote from this. And it's also the Bulls look like they're going in the wrong direction. Now, here's the thing. I said this before, and I'm always going to, and maybe I'm going to admit it, this could just be a little bit of copium on my part, right? Is that this may all be by design. I think that we are, like, any Bulls fans is really upset by the way that the Bulls are looking. This could all very well be by design to be bad. This could be part of, we heard early in the season, came from Joe Cowley, take it with a grain of salt, that he said they're giving this team 30 to 35 games. They want to showcase Vooch. They want to showcase Zach. They want to showcase some players. And then after that 35 game mark, they're going to be active in trying to keep their pick and making moves and being in asset acquisition mode. So this could all be in by plan. And I'll tell you what, it better be by design and by plan, because otherwise you just look utterly incompetent as you've looked for the last 4 years as a front office. And as the trade deadline keeps getting approaching, it says it's important to keep that in the back of your mind, is to watch what this team really does at the trade deadline, because that's going to tell us what their goals really are, right? If this team does sell off Torrey Craig, sell off Zach LaVine, sell off Nikola Vucevic, for whatever they get back, and go ahead and prepare. I'm telling y'all now, most of y'all are going to be upset by whatever the return is back for those players, especially for how they're playing now. You're not going to get equal value back. It's just not going to happen, right? And if that is by design, cool. It is what it is. But this thing has a huge chance and possibility to get more ugly when it comes to the winning aspect of things. If you're expecting this team to win basketball games, that could be it. And I said before, like early in the season with the excitement, and I said, hey, I'm not coming off my 30 to 35 win projection yet. This team's going to have to sustain it over time. And basically, since I said that, it hasn't been sustained, right? It's been nothing but utter struggle. So when you really look at it, man, the Bulls have had 3 wins. It goes back to since November 1st. Literally, they lost the game on November 1st, and since that month is switched, we've won 3 games. And it's November 21st. We won 3 games in 21 days. That's tough. That's tough. No way around that. That is tough to have as a basketball team. And so, if the Bulls are hoping and wishing and wanting to keep their top 10 pick, or hey, if they said coming into the season, we're going to let whatever happens between now and January tell us where this roster really is. The roster is adamantly telling you they are not in a place to compete for anything meaningful, right? But then again, AK and Eversley have had a different level of a different mindset on what competitive really has been. Competitive for them the last few years has been making it to the play-in tournament and not making it out the play-in tournament. That's been being competitive to them, right? And so the Bulls right now sit, and I know it's still early in the season, at the 11th seed. The Milwaukee Bucks are turning it around. They're 5-5 in their last 10. I said that they were going to wake up at some point. Again, I'm not expecting them to be a contender in the Eastern Conference, but they're waking up. They're going to get some regular season wins. You got teams like, again, the Philadelphia 76ers are still struggling. They lost their last 5 in a row. I don't know if they're going to wake up anymore. I kept saying that they may wake up, but, Brooklyn's been solid. They're probably going to sell off some pieces, right? So, we'll see where it shakes out for the Chicago Bulls. But listen here, for those that were thinking that this team was going to be better than last season, because that contingent of Bulls fans that really did think this team was going to be better than what it was last season. Hey, I tell you what, I would love to see how you guys are feeling about that now. Please call, and I don't even mean to argue or flame with y'all. Please call in. I would love to hear from you guys about how you feel about where this team is now. The phone number's in the description of both podcast and YouTube. I'll plug it at the end of the show. But it's just, to hear the national media, and not to say it doesn't matter, right? You guys know how I feel about the national lamestream media. It is what it is when it comes to sports. But to just hear, like Doris Burke yesterday and talking about Josh Giddey's defense in the Bulls, hear Richard Jefferson and talking about where the Bulls are and from this outside perspective and things like that. Like this is a team that is quickly becoming a laughingstock again, right? And hearing Richard Jefferson said that they're not going to be back in relevancy anytime soon. Hey, listen, there used to be a time where this Bulls team and I'd be like, hey, well, we got some things that we need to work on for sure, but we could be right there with the right moves or Lonzo staying healthy. At this point now, like maybe I'm jaded, but I'm no longer betting on those things, right? This is a team that is far off from being truly relevant in the NBA. That just is what it is. We are far way off from truly, truly having relevancy in this league. And so, the Bulls' best case, and for the Bulls fans that are asking, why trade Zach? Why trade Vooch? Why do this? We should be holding on to these guys. It's not easy just to add. And it's easier to tear things down and then to rebuild through the draft, but that takes time. And it's probably not going to be a quick fix. And people who are hoping for Cooper Flagg to come in here and turn this franchise around, that's not likely either. So this team has things that they definitely need to figure out. And one of the things that they need to figure out is what the fuck is going on with the defense. And a big part of that is Josh Giddey. Right now, I'm not, and I've said it early in the show, if you guys want to hear me blame everything on Josh Giddey, you want to hear me reaffirm the thought process on, oh my God, this is all Giddey's fault, that's not what I'm going to do. Because that's not the truth. And I told you guys, I am adamantly against blaming the troubles of a team on one player. I'm adamantly against that. Unless it's your star player and they're truly a star in this league, that's the thing that could throw it off. The place of this Bulls team isn't just because of Josh Giddey. It's a combination of the players not performing it, a lack of talent that fits together on the roster construction by AK, and coaching. It's a combination of all things, right? But Josh Giddey is looking like he's losing his confidence, right? That is the thing. And he came into the season actually playing with some really good confidence. When he was shooting, you notice early in the season throughout the first 5-6 games, when he was shooting the three ball really well, you see how much more effort Josh Giddey gave defensively. He was going over screen. Now, he was still getting burnt at times, but it was more effort, right? And you're clearly seeing a player right now that is losing their confidence as this season goes on. Yes, he looks lost on defense. The confidence is shot. And I'm not saying that gives him an excuse for how his performance is going, but you can clearly see that the confidence of Josh Giddey is shaken at this point in the season. It is. And yes, the season is early. And like I said earlier, like I'm not necessarily giving just the caveat, it's early, they're young, they'll figure it out. When you start approaching the 20 game mark, around the 20 to 25 game mark, that basically starts showing you who players are going to be this season. Now, you can ebb and flow a little bit off that, but it typically starts showing that, and that's where we want to start seeing the improvement. Now, again, like I said, the roster construction is definitely not the type of roster that is there to necessarily maximize Josh Giddey's weaknesses, right, or to overcome some of Josh Giddey's weaknesses. We don't really have the roster that's in a place to overcome those to a great extent. So those are always going to get loud over the course of the season. And as teams start figuring you out, of course, they're going to start attacking some of your weaker spots. And Josh Giddey on defense is that, right? So no, not all the team issues are on Josh Giddey. I want to be clear there. There's not. But I am starting to worry about the confidence being shaken to Josh Giddey. And when you look at what it went through last year, how that season ended, coming into this season, like he rebuilt some of that confidence in the Olympics. And I do not think that we can expect Josh Giddey to turn this thing around as long as his confidence is shaken. And he has to get to the point of doing that. He started off yesterday's game 1 for 1 from 3. He finished 1 of 4, right? He missed the next 3. You need better from that from Josh Giddey. But again, you see the confidence is clearly shaken. And it's not just about him seeing shots go in, but it's about how that impacts the rest of his game as well. The assist numbers are starting to go down. The rebounding numbers are starting to go down. And to me, that screams of a player that just does not have that same confidence level that they had coming into this season. And so I don't know if he can regain it. I don't know what's going to happen or what's needed. I'm not in that locker room, but it is something that's noticeable. And him and Io right now is defensively. Well, Io Dosunmu needs to wake up as well. And I don't want to hear no excuses. Well, he's coming off the bench. That's why. Listen, he's still playing starter level minutes. He played 32 minutes in yesterday's game. He's still playing minutes that are close to that indicative of a starter in this league. So it's not the minutes. And yeah, there could be something to be said about him and Kobe turned into a really good backcourt duo last season. And maybe they're just better when they're out there together. The numbers do support that as well. But regardless of that, Io Dosunmu understood the role that he was coming into this season. He talked about it. The team talked about it. It's no surprises or shocks there. Io Dosunmu also has to be better. These are two players that are hugely important to what the Chicago Bulls are doing, and they both need to be better than what they have been. They just have to. And so you hope that they can kind of figure that thing out, right, when it comes down to it. But overall, like, these two players, I'm starting to get concerned about, and I won't lie to you. I'm getting concerned about, they're not all. I'm concerned about Pat. I'm concerned about the health of Lonzo Ball. I'm concerned as well, starting to get a little bit more concerned about Jalen Smith, not because necessarily his skill level, but I don't think the Bulls really put him in the best situations anymore. And it's something to be said when your point guard's off. Jalen Smith is a player that was benefiting from Lonzo, was benefiting from Josh Giddey and the way that they're able to pass and keep him involved in the game. So yes, I'm starting to be concerned about him as well. Io and Kobe need to do a better job at identifying when he's out there and he has the pick and roll presence and things like that and getting lobs to him. Everybody needs to do that. And so the signs and things are starting to stack up. And at the end of the day, we'll see where it goes and develops for this team. But there are a lot of signs to start being concerned about the thing. Again, that's if winning is your biggest focus. For the Bulls fans that came into this talking about keeping that draft pick needs to be the focus, hey, seems like things are going that way as well. Now, I dropped an emergency video yesterday in regards to Patrick Williams and Lonzo Ball's injury. With the game starting, I didn't drop it on the podcast side, so I'm going to touch on it real quick here, is that I am starting as well to worry about the Bulls medical staff. I came into this season initially saying that this medical staff seemed like they were being protective over players. It seemed like they were identifying ways how to keep small things from turning into big things by having players sit 1 or 2 games when they just had a little bit of soreness and things like that. But it's quickly starting to become different medical teams, same story that we've seen with the Bulls. When you look at Patrick Williams' injury, for example, which we know he's going to be out the entirety of this week, he may be out a lot of next week as well. It was initially said that it was foot inflammation, right? That's initially happened in the November 18th win over the Detroit Pistons. But then it came out, a few hours later, Billy Donovan came out and said that he's going to miss more time than initially expected and said that he will not be, he's going to be absent for at least the rest of this week before he's reevaluated. That is, again, miscommunication and just bad decision-making there. And then when you look at Lonzo Ball is basically confirmed he's out through Thanksgiving. So we're not going to see Lonzo Ball until at earliest the December 2nd game against the Brooklyn Nets, I believe that is. And again, that's another thing where it was initially reported as 10 days, right? Then we heard, hey, it could have turned into a grade 3 sprain. He would have needed season-ending surgery if it ended up being that. So glad we caught it early. Then we heard again from Billy Donovan, who's the most transparent about injuries. Hey, the initial prognosis was actually 2 to 6 weeks. We just, we reported the 10-day thing. The Bulls medical staff, as long as it keeps we've had 3 different medical staffs in the last 12 years, and they all do the same shit. It's all the same shit. The Bulls medical staff is as big of a concern as it has ever been. And unfortunately, that's just what we have to deal with at this point as Bulls fans. It sucks to lose Patrick. Patrick Williams is so important to the Bulls defense. I get why a lot of Bulls fans are so disappointed by his offense and him not taking the next step up, especially with DeMar DeRozan gone. But the defensive aspect of Patrick Williams and his versatility defensively has really helped this team not be even more in the mud defensively than what they have been. So we're going to miss that. Lonzo, even him coming off the bench, we've seen what he means defensively, passing-wise, getting other players involved. It sucks that we're missing these guys for another week or more in both cases. And I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being longer for Lonzo even more so. It just sucks, man. And the injuries aren't necessarily on the medical staff, but how they're dealing with these, communicating them, there's some big red flags there overall, at least in my opinion. But you guys can let me know how you feel down below. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you're following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.